And so like, deep depths of the neighborhood. Yeah. Oh, no, it's okay. And so I knew that she whenever she when they get when they get so sad. Yeah. Yeah, but I felt so bad. I was like, oh, I don't realize we were in you're gonna be here in the really work I was and so it's when they cut me, you know, she wasn't doing it. They go, oh, like you got candy, right? No.
All right, good morning. Happy November. How's everyone doing? Can you believe it's November?
No.
I can't believe it's November. I went to get coffee this morning and they already had the holiday cups at Coffee Bean and I was like, wait, no, I'm not ready.
They have eggnog out, by the way.
Do they really?
Yes, I checked.
At Starbucks or?
Yeah, well, no.
Oh, at the store. Oh, okay. I instantly thought coffee. Yeah.
So we were using like the Friday holiday.
Oh, no, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I mean, I am, but I'm not, right? Did everyone have a good Halloween?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was trick or treating.
It was fun. We got a ton of trick or treaters. I heard you talking about not really having any, right? I think because we put up, or I say we, but it was all me. Put up a huge tunnel and like a ton of lights. People drove to our house. And so my kids were like giving handfuls of candy. I'm like, slow down, there's so many people. We went for like an hour and then they like to hand out candy. I don't know why. I think it's because my partner likes to hand out candy. I like to go trick or treating because it's collecting candy. So we go out and collect candy and then we come back and hand it out. So it was fun, but now can't believe we're in November. I have 20 days, 1 hour and 57 minutes until my cruise. I'm not counting or anything, right? I'm very excited about that for November, I suppose. That it's the whole week of Thanksgiving week. So it's over Thanksgiving. We should have no class over Thanksgiving anyway, in my opinion. Like they did it for 1 year and then they never did it again.
My stats teacher literally said those exact words last time I had that.
Yeah, and that's how it should be, right? People go on vacation. It's nice to have that break. I've planned for it this whole time, so it's in the schedule. It's already on our syllabus. We'll have no class that week of Thanksgiving because I will be gone. I'll be in the middle of the ocean somewhere, right? Eating way too much food. I'll come back all fat and happy, right? But right now I need to work on my tan. My feet are super white. It's gonna look like I've got my white socks on in the pool, but that's okay. But I will be gone that week. We also have a day off coming up on Monday. So it's a holiday. So if you're feeling a little tired, we do get a day off on Monday, which is kind of nice. And then for our class, we will have that week of Thanksgiving off that Monday and Wednesday. And as I said, I planned for that all along. So I've already been approaching it as if I will be gone. So what we'll do today is we'll jump back in. We'll hopefully get pretty close, if not wrap up pregnancy, and then childbirth and so on. And then our next unit is STIs. And then we go into varieties of expression, power and coercion, and selling sex. So those are our topics that we have remaining. It feels like it always goes so fast from here, right? Just to put that out there. Maybe that's good, maybe that's bad, I don't know. But November always feels like it just goes by so quickly. So all right, last time we were talking about these physical symptoms and I had a clip I wanted to play for you. And I don't know why, like it seems to cut out on some clips. So I found I have the DVD of it. And so I put that in here. So I want to show you this clip of a very common like symptoms for people who are pregnant. And as I mentioned last time, there is such an incredible variety of how women experience pregnancy. And so some women like go through all these symptoms, some go through almost none.
That's true. Like that. I really hope I forget that.
Wendy Cooper, everybody.
Okay, so what I love about that clip is, she's just calling out the idea of, the whole thing being like magical. People talk about it being this wonderful magical experience. For some it can be, and for others it can be quite hard, right? There's kind of an incredible range. She has a lot of of the symptoms that people struggle with when they're pregnant. We talked a little bit about morning sickness, not always necessarily being in the morning, more common in the morning because of the estrogen levels, but it can be at any time during the day. So a lot of women experience like different physical symptoms. And as the baby gets bigger, that pressure does build on your hips and on your vaginal wall and on the pelvic floor muscles. And it can be uncomfortable, right? And people sometimes gain quite a bit of weight during pregnancy. It's kind of all over the place. And for others, it's almost nothing. And so it's really all kind of a lot of variety. Sometimes partners can even have symptoms as well. Really interesting phenomenon. It's called Couvade syndrome. Couvade is French for to hatch. It's very common that partners of someone who are pregnant will also have some symptoms of pregnancy. It might be cravings. Sometimes people will be like, I felt the baby move. Obviously, like if they're male, that's not possible, right? Or if they're not pregnant, it's not possible. But oftentimes people who are the partner of someone pregnant might have morning sickness or cravings or things that are kind of like sympathetic reactions. It's almost like a placebo effect offshoot that can happen. One other thing we talk about during pregnancy is sex during pregnancy. Totally fine and allowed all the way up until someone enters active labor. When you're in labor, that's not something you should be doing, obviously, and someone's probably not very much in the mood for it when they're in labor. We'll talk about labor shortly. But it actually can be one way to induce labor, or at least some people will try that. Going on a walk will work just as well, as a side note. But sex during pregnancy is usually fine and allowed as long as there aren't any medical complications, right? Like if somebody has preeclampsia or they have like issues with the placenta or the baby, the doctor might say you can't have intercourse or sex during pregnancy. But typically it's fine and allowed. It just gets more and more tricky the farther along a woman gets. You might have to modify positions. Sometimes women aren't in the mood because of all the physical symptoms they're experiencing. Other women might be more in the mood, especially in the second trimester when the baby's not that big yet. So it's kind of all over the place as well, but typically allowed as long as there aren't any medical complications that would prohibit it. As far as like prenatal care, really important that the woman who is pregnant be getting prenatal care, and that they're going to the doctor, the baby's being monitored, they're watching for different conditions that can happen. When somebody is pregnant, everything that they put into their body goes directly to that fetus, right? It goes to the fetus through the placenta. Placenta is a little disc-shaped organ that connects to the umbilical cord. Everything that the woman puts into her body goes to the baby, which is why there are so many rules about what you can eat and not eat or use or not use when you're pregnant. What are some of the things you're not supposed to put in your system when you're pregnant? Anyone know some things? Yeah.
Deli meats.
Deli meats. Interestingly, there are some deli meats that are not pasteurized and they can be dangerous, right? Yeah. Yeah. Sushi and raw fish, because it contains high elements of mercury and the baby can't break it down, it can actually cause birth defects if you have too much of it, for sure. Yeah.
It's not like something you ingest, but like they tell pregnant women they shouldn't be around like any like kitty litter, like
Yeah.
kitty litter.
Right.
So then
Toxoplasmosis,
yeah,
right? Yeah,
something,
yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, you shouldn't inhale any of the dust from litter. And so that's one thing to be careful of as well. Yeah,
Even certain medication they can't even touch too.
yeah, right, because it can go through the skin and be dangerous
Really
to
toxic.
the baby. There's not very many, but there's a couple, right? Yeah.
I know.
Uh-huh, yeah. Nicotine, right? Any kind of like nicotine, cigarettes and cigarette smoke and nicotine are one of the most dangerous things you can put into your system when you're pregnant. It affects the oxygen levels of the baby, can cause all kinds of birth defects and problems. What are some other things? Anyone know anything else you're not supposed to like consume or? Exactly, right? Caffeine's an interesting gray area. You can have a little bit.
Their doctors, some of them, they drink an excessive amount of caffeine.
Sure.
And some of them, their doctors are like, hey, no, chill on that, and others are like, it's fine.
Yeah. It's a weird, like mixed substance, right? And so the general rule is to minimize it as much as possible. But if you drink a lot of caffeine, it could even be dangerous to like cut back severely when you're pregnant. So the thought is that caffeine can overstimulate the fetus and cause you to have like kind of it can lead to things like ADHD and things like that, but it's very correlational in nature. So it's just kind of a gray area. Try to avoid it if you can. Anything else? Yeah. Alcohol is another really big one, right? It can cause fetal alcohol syndrome, any kind of prescription medication, right? Certain antidepressants can be really dangerous to a fetus because they are absorbed through the placenta. So you have to be careful what you put in your system because it all goes to the baby. Now, really cool, the body's designed in a very like unique way for this because sometimes people don't know they're pregnant for a little while. Right? And so what if they're using all those things because they didn't know? The first 3 months of pregnancy, that baby is actually nourished by a completely different sac, right? By its own little embryonic sac. And so things that a woman puts into her body don't go to the baby until after about 3 months. So really cool that the body's designed that way because a lot of people don't know for several weeks into pregnancy that they are actually pregnant. But after about 3 months or so, everything goes to that baby. So you have to be very careful. It can lead to things like fetal alcohol syndrome, different issues with the baby. We also see issues like, obviously a miscarriage can happen. Most common in the first trimester. So in the first trimester, people are at the highest risk for a miscarriage because everything is biologically unfolding. Right. And so if there's any hiccup in that, the baby's often miscarried or spontaneous abortion, it's sometimes called as well. This can happen all the way through, but it's most common in the first trimester. Right. My partner's sister had a miscarriage the day before her baby was born. He had a scheduled C-section on Tuesday. She went to the mall and went shopping on Monday. And like the doctor told her to be on bed rest. It was like right before Christmas, so she was trying to get some stuff done before the baby was born, and she ended up miscarrying the day before this little guy was born. So it was so sad. It can happen all the way through, right? But it's definitely most common in the first trimester. You can also get other conditions like preeclampsia. As a woman gets close to giving birth and going into labor, sometimes people have issues with their blood pressure just shooting up through the roof, and it can require medication or like medical monitoring or bed rest. So there are obviously things that can go wrong, but going to the doctor and having regular like ultrasounds and screenings can really help to minimize that. And the ultrasound or a sonogram tends to be the way that we monitor the baby's health. And all the way from the moment of pregnancy, like starting around like 6 to 7 weeks, you can already hear the heartbeat. You can hear that on an ultrasound. And you can see like the baby's development. They'll watch the amount of fluid around the baby. They'll watch the baby's growth. Somewhere around like 14 weeks or so, sometimes you can determine the sex of the baby from an ultrasound, depending on like the early structures that are being formed. If you've never seen an ultrasound, I found a little video that kind of shows what they look like. Typically, they're that black and depending on what they see. But these ultrasounds can be really helpful for kind of monitoring the health and development of that fetus or that newborn baby. There's also a lot of genetic screening options that you can consider. These are elective, so you can choose whether to do these or not. And we didn't do any of them because it took us so long and so much to get pregnant that we didn't want to test. Like we were like, we'll take whatever we get. Like it took us what like I said, $48,000 to have our oldest. And so like we were completely fine with whatever we ended up with. But there are some things that you can do to test, to look for genetic defects, to look for certain conditions. The old method is called amniocentesis. And that's what's happening here with this really long needle. They go in through the stomach and they remove a little bit of that fluid from the uterus, of that like fluid that's surrounding the baby, and you can test it, right? And what it will do is it'll help you determine the sex of the baby 100%. You can look for genetic and chromosomal defects. Some of the newer methods, there's one called CVS or chorionic villus sampling. This one, they take a small amount of tissue from the placenta, right? So surgically, they take just the tiniest little sliver and they check it for any kind of abnormalities. They check it for genetic and like chromosomal abnormalities. And then there's some blood tests that you can do as well. The downside to these is they're very rarely accurate, right? You get a lot of like false positives and false negatives. So you might do one of these and it comes back with like, oh, your baby is like 100% clear and fine. And then they're born with a genetic abnormality. Or you could have it the other way. My partner's sister, the same one I just told you about, she did this for her oldest. And it came back that he was 98% likely to have Down syndrome. Right? He's now 25. He doesn't have Down syndrome at all. Right. And there was this whole debate of like, should we keep him or not? Because it was really early. She decided to keep him. She's like, I will love him and take care of him no matter what. Didn't ever develop Down syndrome. So like they're very rarely 100% accurate, but a lot of people will do these to 100% determine the sex of a baby. Because sometimes you can't tell from an ultrasound. Our oldest every time would curl into a ball. And so you could never see the structures of her like body. And so they didn't know. We didn't know all the way through if she was male or female. Until the moment she was born, when it felt like the longest pause ever. The doctor was like, congratulations, it was like tick, 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 girl, right? I was like, oh my gosh, right? It took so long. It was like the longest 3 seconds of my life. Yeah. Did you have
You can't check for like autism, right?
autism? No, right?
It's nothing.
Yeah, because autism is more of like a mental illness, right? And so it's looking for things typically like Down syndrome, and some of the like genetic or like chromosomal defects that are common. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Experience when it's like really late, like when the fetus is like pretty much almost developed.
Yeah. Yeah.
C-section would be like you would do some labor.
So it can go either way. So like for my partner's sister, for example, she had a scheduled C-section because her baby was 13 pounds. That is really large. Most babies are 7 to 9. Okay, all 3 of her kids, like including that one that she lost, were 12 plus pounds. Just big babies, right? And so she had to have a C-section to have him removed, because he was fully grown and developed at, I mean, it was 1 day before birth. It was at 39 weeks. So it can be a C-section, or sometimes you have to go through the process of labor, and deliver that baby, right? So it can go either way. Yeah. Yeah, so an early miscarriage, what will happen is it's so small. You're looking at like less than the size of like a raspberry, right? And so oftentimes a woman will have like heavy bleeding, or like even spotting can be like the precursor. And it wouldn't be anything that required a procedure. It's just very minimal.
Is it possible, when they have a miscarriage, like early on, that not all of like the fetus, like
Yeah.
exited? Is that possible?
Yeah, and so like, let's say for example, so when we had our oldest, we had twins for a couple of weeks. And we found out on Monday and we had lost the twin by Wednesday. And we still had our one, and so we were fine with it. And so typically in that like scenario, when our daughter was born, that other material would come out, right? And so if you have, like a lot of people will end up with twins and never know it. And it just kind of, and then exits when you go through labor. But in a very early miscarriage, it's just bleeding typically that you would see. Any other thoughts or questions? Again, this is something that's totally optional. So a lot of couples do it. It depends on your insurance too. Sometimes it's covered, sometimes it's not. And that's another factor. The cost of it might be another factor as to which you choose. A lot of people go through childbirth classes as they get ready to give birth, right? They go through prepared childbirth classes like Lamaze. Lamaze is a breathing technique that you can learn. We go to classes where you learn like how to breathe during labor. What are your pain options during labor? Like what are the different things you can choose? They teach you how to change a diaper. They teach you how to hold a baby, how to breastfeed, the advantages of breastfeeding versus bottle feeding. It's all sorts of things like that. And so there's a lot of things that you can do to help you prepare, different breathing and exercises to do to help induce labor and get through labor. Sometimes people will even hire a midwife or a doula to help them. And so traditionally what happens is you have a doctor that helps you with delivery, but a midwife or a doula is kind of like an intermediary person. that would help guide you and be there to support you, be your advocate to the doctor. And so sometimes people will hire them as well. So from that movie Baby Mama, there's a couple examples of like birthing classes. That perineum, that thin stretch of skin between the vaginal opening and the anal opening, sometimes that can tear during childbirth if you have a very large baby or the baby's head is very large. And so doing exercises to help prepare for that, talking about what your options are for pain management. My favorite was there were diaper races, like learning how to change diapers and competing with the other dads. Like so I had fun with those. Like it was a lot of like interesting tips and suggestions, and they're typically offered by insurance, so they're often free. And the cool thing too is sometimes you meet other people who are in the same part of like pregnancy as you, and then you can meet up afterward and like have like a support network. Yeah.
I just ask, 'cause I feel like with anything, especially like parenting books and like giving birth, there's a lot of information. And maybe not always accurate.
Sure.
So did you like read any books or anything like that before you had your children?
Yeah, I mean, my partner's an English teacher, so she read like every book she could find, right? I did a lot of like, I had every pregnancy app that like there was on my phone. And like, it was like every week I would obsess about those, and she read all the books, right? So we kind of, did that.
I was gonna say, did you kind of like take certain things?
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, how do I describe it? Like, did you just
implement the things you said?
yeah, like, did you find that some of the things that you read about were accurate or true?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was true, which was nice. It was, I mean, we obviously had a unique situation in that we were like two women, and so most things weren't geared toward that in any way. But a lot of it was really helpful, like little things to watch for and what's normal each week. And so like there would be times where my partner would have a little bit of spotting, and it was like, is that normal or not? And like sometimes books are really helpful and sometimes they just scare you, right? But I think in general, we both tend to be like, we like to be armed with information, so I felt like it was helpful. We're both teachers, so we're like, give us all the information, right? So I felt like overall it was helpful to read all of them. Like, I don't know if there was anything that was like life-changing in it, but it was helpful. Labor. All right, let's get into labor now, right? I've gone through like roughly 38, 39 weeks. Most babies are born like 39 weeks. 37 weeks is considered full term, right? Like, so after 37, that baby's no longer premature. And so when somebody starts to go into labor, they're starting to have pain. And like that pain is coming from the dilation of your cervix, getting ready to allow that baby to come out. Right? If you're pregnant, the cervix is closed tight, which is what you see in like the first image up there. And then the cervix slowly starts to open. And as it opens, there's contractions, which cause you to have that experience of pain. Now, when women are in their first pregnancy, like it's often longer lasting, labor lasts longer, and it can get quicker with each progressive pregnancy. The body, it's like it knows what to do, right? And so it happens much, much faster. But there's kind of an informal rule that most insurances use, and it's called the 5-1-1 rule of labor. So the 5-1-1 rule of labor. And what this means is when your contractions are 5 minutes apart, right? So each contraction is 5 minutes apart, lasting 1 minute each for at least 1 hour. That's what the 5-1-1 stands for. So when your contractions are 5 minutes apart, lasting 1 minute each for at least an hour, you're in active labor. And you need to go to the hospital. The only exception to this would be if your water breaks. Now, this always happens in movies. A little bit of a pet peeve of mine. In movies, it's like, oh, my water broke. I'm having my baby. That actually happens very, very rarely, right? So very rarely does a woman's water break before all of this is happening. It typically breaks during this stage, because what happens is as your cervix opens up, the water starts to come out, right? And so they call that your bag of waters, technically, instead of your water breaking, it's your bag of water. And at that point, the baby's clock starts. A baby has to be born within 24 hours of the water breaking because there's no longer anything to let them breathe and sustain them, right? So either you have 511 or your water breaks means you need to go to the hospital. Now, very confusing as you are starting to get closer to childbirth and labor, you start to have warm-up contractions that we call Braxton Hicks contractions after the doctor who coined it. And these contractions are less painful and more frequent. But oftentimes, first pregnancies, people are like, I'm in labor, and they go to the hospital. Really common that people go to the hospital a couple of times and they're sent home. Like, you're not ready yet, go home, right? I know you want to be ready, but you're not, go home, right? That happens multiple times often. And so Braxton Hicks are like warm-up contractions. Full-blown contractions, you're not able to do anything during them. They stop you in that time that you're having them. It's like, it's an intense, like a very, very intense cramp kind of pain. And oftentimes people will have to stop or sit down or like take a minute and breathe through them. That's a full-blown contraction. But oftentimes we have these little warm-up ones that start to build as you get closer and closer to pregnancy or to labor, sorry. So labor is divided into 3 stages. So the first stage usually lasts about 10 to 16 hours for the first baby, right? It can be quite a bit faster for subsequent ones, but in this one, you're having regular contractions, your cervix is dilating, effacement and dilation, right? So it's stretching out and thinning out and opening because the baby has to come through there, right? So what's going to happen is we go from fully closed to fully dilated over the course of like hours. Right. And that's what the pain is your body like starting to open up and make room for that baby to come out. And we talk about dilation. I have this image just to kind of give you perspective. So obviously closed is where you start. When you're 1 centimeter dilated, that's a Cheerio. 2 would be a lifesaver. Banana for 3, a Nilla wafer for 4, an Oreo for 5, a tomato for 6, like an English muffin for 8, and a full-blown bagel for 10. Right? So when you are the size of a bagel, that means you're fully dilated, and that's where that baby's head is going to like travel down through. So when they're saying, oh, you're fully dilated, that means you're all 10 centimeters open, the baby's ready to be born. If they're saying like you're 3 centimeters, 4 centimeters, 5 centimeters, right? Just to give you kind of a perspective of what that size would look like. But they're watching how you progress during this process, right? The second stage of labor is when you're actively pushing that baby out. In this stage, half hour to 2 hours on average, this is the active pushing, right? So if you're giving birth vaginally, you are pushing that baby down through the canal, right? Through the vaginal canal head first. Right? And this is when that baby is coming out. If they say the baby's crowning, you can see the tip of their head or maybe even their hair, right? And so the baby starting to be visible to come out. If a baby doesn't come out after like 2 hours or so, then that person might need a C-section. Sometimes that happens. People will actively push and the baby just doesn't come down through the vaginal canal, and they have to have a C-section to have it removed. And we'll talk about C-sections more in a minute. The third stage of labor, so after you give birth, there's actually one more little stage, and this is where you push out the placenta and what we call the afterbirth. So after the baby comes out, there's like one more last little push, and all the like blood and placenta and all that like other matter comes out of the vagina, right? So kind of 3 main stages. One is a lot of contractions, it lasts a while. One is actively pushing. And then that third stage is just the placenta and all of that kind of coming out. There's our dilation. If people don't have it progress properly, or if the baby's too big, or if you have twins or multiples, then oftentimes they'll consider a C-section. A cesarean section or a C-section is a surgery. And what they do is they make an incision and they go in and pull the baby out of the uterus surgically. Now, this obviously requires like anesthesia. This requires a lot more time to heal and recover. But if a baby is big, right, so more than 9 pounds, if you have multiples, if the baby is breached, like they're turned the wrong way, right, then oftentimes you have to do this as well. So there's a lot of reasons why someone might have a C-section. You can also plan it, right? You schedule it. You literally schedule it ahead of time if it's warranted. Or, as I mentioned, if the pregnancy and labor doesn't go as expected, then it might end up here. So when our first was being born, we went into the hospital and we spent 3 days in the hospital before my partner gave birth. And she was in labor, but it wasn't progressing, so they gave her all sorts of medication. And she pushed for 2.5 hours. And my daughter didn't want to come out. She was like, I'm just gonna stay in here. Like, she didn't want to come out. So we ended up having to have a C-section, and they pulled her out that way. We had a scheduled C-section for our twins because once you've had a C-section, they tend to do it again for any subsequent pregnancies. You can choose to do a vaginal birth. They call it a VBAC, but typically they do a cesarean section if you've had one in a previous pregnancy. There's also water births and hypnobirthing that are kind of popular. Water birth looks like that. It's a very special, very sanitary body of water. It's not like a traditional hot tub or anything. It kind of looks like a hot tub, but you give birth into water. And the thought is that it's less harsh, right? The baby goes from water to water, right? And it's thought to be like a calmer way for them to be born. Sometimes people will manage their pain through hypnosis. I've never seen anyone do this, but it is something that people do, where they learn to control their pain on their own instead of receiving things like epidurals or medication to help with pain. So lots of kind of options for giving birth. The traditional way, right, is back here, is this process. But if things go wrong or if it's a subsequent baby, you might end up with a C-section. I have, I want to play you one more clip from that movie. It's kind of it's 18 minutes or so. But the cool thing of part of this clip is it's multiple people going through the process of giving birth. And they all kind of have their own process that they go through. So one of them has twins, and it's totally it's not even a big deal for her at all. One is Wendy, the one that we just watched giving birth. And then there's another one that goes to adopt, which I thought was a really nice portrayal of that as well. So let me see if I can bring this up for you here. Okay. Okay. So it's about 18 minutes. It's all of these couples going through their process of having them. All right. Here we go.
I'm sorry I can't be there. I just want to congratulate you all on working so hard. And forget about what the scale says tonight. You're all winners. Son of a bitch.
Jules, we're live. You're live. Citizens are gonna love that. Oh, hey.